Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Ascent Meridian Technology Center's live stream. My name is Julie Griffin, and I am a project manager here in our Workforce and Economic Development Division. And I am just so excited to talk to you today. If you noticed on the event, it said the special guest this time around was me. So I am so excited to be here to talk to you guys about the 6 types of working genius. And so that I'm not just talking to myself the entire time, I have somebody else that I'm going to bring on screen with me, who I guess I could consider one of our special guests. And this is Miss Rebecca Easton, who also happens to be our executive director of our department and my boss. So
Hey.
welcome to the Ascent, Rebecca.
Hey, Julie, it's great to be here. I've enjoyed watching some of the other ones before, so it's fun to be an actual part today.
Yay! I'm so glad that you were willing to come on camera live, especially because I know that can be really intimidating if you haven't done it before. So I just, it's a lot easier to have a conversation about things versus just winging it for 30 minutes, which I was totally ready to do.
And you could do it, I know.
I could absolutely do it. So I just want to shout out some people before we get started. My friend Chris Hennessy is here and Jacqueline Beck is here. She's excited to hear about the topic. If you guys are watching, so we are streaming to LinkedIn, obviously, on Meridian's platform, my platform, Rebecca's, also to my Facebook and Rebecca's Facebook. So if you are here watching, please drop a comment because we won't know that you're here otherwise. And we would love to engage with you and have a conversation. If you have specific questions or comments or stories, please drop those in the comments because we love to be able to interact with you that way as well. I think it's a lot more fun when we can have more of a conversation and really tap into maybe some of the questions or specific nuances that are important to you or that you find fascinating. So please drop a comment because that's what makes it fun. That's the beauty of live streaming. So with that, I'll let you take the reins.
Yeah, no, I've been looking forward to our conversation because it's things that we've been talking about in our office since you started this journey. I know you recently got certified in facilitating the working genius, but and we've just had some great conversations, seeing it play out in our individual team members, but then collectively as a team. So if you'll start us off, give us a kind of an overview of working genius and what it entails.
Okay, perfect. Well, the working genius, there's 6 types, and it spells widget, even though they don't ever use the acronym widget when they talk about it. But it's wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity are the 6 types. And they really kind of follow this flow of work. So if you think about how work starts, gets done, and then finishes up, that follows like that widget acronym. So starting with the W stands for wonder. And people with the genius of wonder love to speculate and ask questions and ponder things. They're really big picture thinking people, like operating at like the 30,000 foot level. They're people that are very speculative. Like on the podcast that I listen to a lot about the working genius, they talk about being able to just like stare out the window and ponder the world. So if that sounds like you might have the genius of wonder. That is not one of mine. The next one is invention, and people with the genius of invention love to come up with solutions. They get a lot of joy and energy from being like, hey, I have an idea. What if this? They're the responders to the big wonder questions. They love to brainstorm. The next one is discernment, and people with the genius of discernment really have great gut feeling. They're the people that you gravitate towards when you have a question or a pondering, like, is it this or that? People that they have good gut feeling, they have good intuition, and generally they're right. They know how to give people feedback and be able to tweak. Maybe an inventor throws out a solution like, yeah, that sounds good, but maybe if we tweak this and it makes it so much better. So that's the genius of discernment. People with the genius of galvanizing are really talented, and they get a lot of joy out of like rallying the troops and getting people excited about going and doing something. And I know galvanizing is one of your geniuses, Rebecca. And so it's been really fun the last few days to see how that plays out and how that like shows up in work. And like galvanizing is not one of mine. And so like it drains me, but I can see how it feeds you with energy, and that is
Yeah.
just really fun to notice. They love to like get things moving, get people going in the right direction, and just really rally people around an idea. Enablement is the next one, and which happens to be one of my geniuses. And so people with enablement, they help get things done. They respond to the need and come alongside someone and get things done or help them get things done on their terms. So enablement people were good at anticipating needs and responding accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last genius is tenacity. And people with tenacity are task oriented and they love to take things across the finish line. They like standards and have the freedom to do things the way that they see they need to be done to get completed.
Yeah. So, so there's an assessment, right? Like
Mhm.
that's how you find out what your genius is. Do you just have one? Do you have multiple? Talk about kind of what it means with working genius versus the opposite end about a working frustration.
Okay. Absolutely. There is an assessment. It's a very quick, less than 10 minutes. I actually had a friend who completed it in 4. But it's a very quick assessment, very easy to do. And it spits out of these 6 geniuses, everybody has 2 geniuses, 2 competencies, and 2 frustrations. And so, what is really unique about this assessment is it's focusing on what brings you energy and joy and fulfillment. And so, if
Mm,
you've ever had a day at work when you were just jam packed busy and you got to the end of the day and you had like all the energy in the world, you were probably working in your genius.
mm,
Whereas if you have a day that you're just like, I can't do it anymore, you may have been working either too much in your competency or most likely in your frustration. And so, one of the great things to remember is that every job is a 6-letter job. Every job
mm.
requires wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. And each individual only has 2 of those. And so it's great to be able to recognize what we bring to the table and also what our teammates bring to the table. And it really helps kind of balance out, hey, I really need your galvanizing right now to get this thing moving, or I need your tenacity to get this thing across the finish line. And so it really gives you language on what part of the project process you're in and what is needed in the moment to get that thing moving forward.
So, would you say, Julie, that working genius is a personality tool? Is it a productivity tool? Is it a team building tool? Like, how would you describe it from that kind of perspective?
It's all kind of yes to all of those. It's
Okay.
probably about 20% personality, but really 80% productivity because it's really focused on how people like to get things done, how they like to work. It's all about work, and whether that's work like your 8 to 5 day job, or that's work at home with your family, or work planning a camping trip, or whatever that work is, it's how you enjoy or do get things done. Um, so it's more productivity than personality. One of the things that I love about it is it kind of helps explain how people show up differently to work. But, before we went live backstage, we were talking about how you and I are both the same Myers-Briggs type, but have drastically different geniuses. And so we show up to work differently. And so it gives you kind of an insight into yourself about why you do enjoy certain types of work and why other work leaves you absolutely drained.
Yeah. So if I take working genius, and for me, I have, and so I'm that inventor, galvanizer, and I think Krista Scamelhorn popped up that's
Mhm.
what she is as well. Um, that that what's the best thing if I know what my working geniuses are, but I'm on a team that doesn't? What do you suggest I do to bring that information to my team, to
Mhm.
my coworkers, to kind of help them if I don't have control of getting the whole team to take it?
Right. If you don't have control over getting the whole team to take it, there's there is a book called the Working Genius, 6 Types of Working Genius. There's also a podcast. So through listening to those or reading those or even looking at other your assessment, and because when you take the assessment, it tells you what your genius's competencies and frustrations are, but it also gives you a description of what those are and how those show up in people. And so a lot of times, especially if you've worked with somebody for a long time, you can have a pretty good idea of what theirs are. Now, there is a caveat here because a lot of times people think, well, if you're good at something, you must love it. And that's not necessarily the case. And that's one of the things
Ah,
that I think Working Genius really reveals for us is that it's really the emphasis is on joy and energy and fulfillment because you can be really great at something and it suck the ever living life out of you.
yeah,
It's true.
yeah,
I mean, and so you can look at your team and it's like, all right, what type of work do you do that brings you the most energy and joy?
yeah.
And based on what their answers are, you can probably categorize them pretty accurately.
So obviously that working genius when you're working in your geniuses, that's the joy, the fulfillment. And then I know April, she posted that discernment enablement are her working genius, but her superpower competencies are that galvanizing and invention.
Mhm,
Um, so going back to your comment about you can do something and be good at it, but it may still drain you. Is it that working competency that allows you to be successful in that? But then if you're in that competency versus your genius for too long, is that where
mhm,
you kinda can experience that burnout? Is that what
mhm.
it
Yeah,
goes to?
working too much in your competencies is really what leads to burnout because it's not as obvious that it's draining you. Whereas in your frustration, it's pretty darn obvious you're doing a task, you're like, "This I do not enjoy this. This is not good." And I can do it when I need to, but it doesn't give me any joy. Whereas working your competencies can kind of sneak up on you. And it's because
Mm,
it's not as you're not as averse to it because, yeah, I'm pretty good at this. I can do it for a while. And you can do it for a while. Where we have to be careful is especially on teams, if maybe there is a nobody on the team with galvanizing and it's one of your competencies and it's a frustration for everybody else, you may be plugged to say, hey, since you have it as a competency, we need you to galvanize us. And you
yeah,
can do that for a little while, but if you day after day are having to spend time galvanizing, it's going to suck the life out of you and lead to burnout.
yeah. You and I had, some conversations yesterday again because we saw our working geniuses in action, at a meeting, and we talked a little bit about the combination of your
Mhm.
geniuses because that adds sort of another level as well,
Yes.
doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So the Table Group, which is run by Patrick Lencioni, the author of the Working Genius book and kind of the headliner of this assessment and model, they have come up with different pairings for each of the types. So there's 15 different pairings, and it's really interesting to look at them and say, all right, these two letters together make this type of person. So, for example, like you, Rebecca, and Krista here are IGs or GIs. You're the evangelizing innovator. And even I think just that title probably goes, "Oh, that's me." You probably feel like, "That's me, isn't it?"
Yeah, definitely.
And so just the really short description is an excitable and convincing generator and promoter of new ideas, combines curiosity and confidence with infectious enthusiasm. And I think anybody on here who knows you or Krista will think that is them to a T. Um, so me, I'm a enablement tenacity, and so mine is the loyal finisher, a responsive, dependable doer, willing to step up when something is needed and determined to fulfill their commitments.
Yeah, and I think what's so amazing because we chuckled both of us at those descriptions yesterday because we'd been in a meeting with a client and I'm like, yes, we can do this. This is an exciting project, and I am confident. And I have to have you to actually pull it off because my enthusiasm is
Yes.
only going to get us so far to actually get the project done.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it
And
was
I think that's a great example of how it's important to have somebody on your team with all of these geniuses because like I said, every job is a six-letter job and we only have two geniuses. So
yeah,
you have to have people around you who can fill in those gaps. Somebody who, if you are trying to come up with something new, you can say, hey, can I borrow your invention for a minute? I have an idea I need to come up with or a solution I need to come up with.
yeah,
Or out of these ideas, which one do you think is best? If we go to somebody on the team with discernment,
Mhm.
and even like you said, you need people like me with enablement and tenacity to take it to the end of the process.
Yeah, you're
I
actually gonna get the ball across the goal line,
Yes.
much more effectively than I would, and it'll bring you more joy, right?
Mm.
Or that fulfillment. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And I talked at the beginning about like kind of the process of work. So I want to go back a little bit. So like the first two geniuses, wonder and invention, are in that ideation stage of work where you're really debating like what is the problem? What is the thing that we need to solve? And then the inventor comes and throws out some ideas or possible solutions. Then that's like the ideation phase of work. The next phase is discernment and galvanizing, and that's like the activation phase where
Mhm.
you discern those ideas, figure out what you need to do, what the possible or what the solutions are, the steps to move forward, and then that galvanizer takes over and says, "All right, let's go and do this. We're going to rally the troops, get everybody on board, and go on our mission." And then the implementation phase is that E&T, enablement and tenacity, and that's where they come in and come alongside and take things to the next step, and then tenacity gets it across the finish line. So there's that three phases of work that also correlate with the geniuses.
Yeah. Phil says he's all about the fulfillment. I think we all are, right? We wanna come to work and actually enjoy what
Hmm.
we do and have it be life-giving in our work versus that life-draining. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
So, are there some things I mean, what if a team doesn't have all 6? What if a team is off balance? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we have a tendency to hire people who are like us sometimes when we make
Right.
decisions versus thinking about that well-rounded team. Are there things that teams can do? Are they sunk? Do they need to go out and seek those people? Like, can you address that if a team's off balance?
Mhm. I think that's a great question, especially when it comes to teams. So there, within the assessment, there is ability to create a team map. And so once everybody on your team takes this assessment, you generate a team map, and it gives you a really nice visual of everybody on your team, where their geniuses are,
Mhm.
excuse me, and where their frustrations are. And so you can see if you're heavy in one area, lacking in another. And if you don't have somebody on your team or only one person on your team in a certain genius, that is definitely something to be aware of. And the awareness piece is the first step to like really acknowledging that and being like, okay, this is something we need to pay attention to.
Mhm.
Um, I'm going to segue for a minute, but they say which type of genius is the best for a leader? And it's the
Mhm.
self-aware leader. So knowing what your genius are and what your natural gifts are versus your limitation is really the first step. So once you know where everybody falls with like their genius and their frustration, you can look at it and see, all right, this is an area that we need to pay attention to. So maybe we only have one person in the wonder phase. And so one of the great tools that I got from the table group as a facilitator is this like team diagnostic page. And it tells you if you're lacking wonder on your team, you may you may have the issue of being too busy to notice because you don't have somebody who's kind of contemplating and thinking about what else is going on. If you more of your focus is in the getting things done, you may miss opportunities to capitalize on something that you don't notice because you're not looking for it.
Yeah.
So it's a great resource to be able to look and see, all right, if our team has this, this is what we can see as a strength. If our team is lacking this, here's
We
something we need to be aware of.
Yeah. Going back to something you said just a minute ago about being that leader, because you can, like you said, you can lead out of any of
Hmm.
those, whatever your combination of two are with your working genius. It's you're the best leader when you're an authentic leader, right? And
Hmm.
so that learning that self-awareness to your point of just I can
Absolutely.
lead out of enablement and tenacity if that's what my working geniuses are. And it can look and
Yeah.
sound and feel differently, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that authenticity piece is really important because I think a lot of people, if they are in a leadership role, they think they have to be galvanizers. They have to be the one that rallies the troops and gets people excited. And so they may try and do that. And if it's a competency, I mean, they can probably do it, but they're eventually going to get burnt out. Same thing with a frustration. I mean, if I galvanizing is one of my frustrations, and it made so much sense because I am not that rah person. I'm like, just do your job. So if I'm trying to galvanize, I am overcompensating, and it's absolutely probably not going to come across as authentic because I'm faking it. The
Mhm.
fake it till you make it in this instance really doesn't work because
Yeah.
it's a frustration. It doesn't come naturally, and that's going to come across when I'm trying to do the things. And so it's better to even say, you know what? I don't have any galvanizing in me, but we really need to gather around this and get things moving. And I think even that acknowledgement of your limitation is a strength as a leader because you're saying, like, I'm human. I know what my limitations are, but we still have to get this done. So let's work together.
Yeah, and then to kind of that flip side to know, oh, if I know that wonder isn't one of your geniuses, but I'm like, hey, think about this, if I want you to work in that wonder phase, I'm either just sucking the life out of you, or if I ask you to do that too often, too frequently, for too long, I could burn you out if it's a competency. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Jacqueline's asking the question about, where can we take the assessment? Is it free? Talk a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
that process, how
Okay.
an individual can do it, and then what we offer in regards to Meridian and how we can maybe come alongside teams and help them in this
Okay.
regard.
Yeah, excellent. If you go to workinggenius.com, you can take the assessment there. It is $25. So it is not free, but it is a pretty low barrier to being able to take the assessment. And you can do that on your own. Or if you want to work with us here at Meridian, we could do that as well. I've got a bank of codes that I've already got ready to send out to potential clients. So if you want to work with us directly here, get a hold of me and we can set you up. I could send you codes, and then we can work with you individually or even with you as with your team on how the working genius can impact you each individually and then as a team as well.
Yeah. What I've appreciated too is that the table group, Lencioni's group, they've got some other great resources.
Hmm.
You want to talk a little bit about the various podcasts I know that they're available and have
Hmm.
some of these conversations on?
Yeah, absolutely. It's called the Working Genius podcast. Found wherever you listen to podcasts. I listen to it all the time. But there's also the At the Table podcast by the Table Group. And that podcast is all about like organizational health, whereas the Working Genius podcast is strictly working genius. And they've got 50 or 60 episodes now, and
Hmm.
everyone is different.
Yeah.
And like you would think, how many times can you talk about the working genius? And it turns out a lot of times because there's so many nuances, and they're only I think one I listened to yesterday was 13 minutes, so like
Yeah.
15 to 30 minutes max are their podcasts, usually in the 20-minute range. And it just gives you really actionable tidbits on how to either think about using the working genius or how to implement the working genius, or just different ways to think about things. um, the podcast I listened to this week was all about craves and crushed by. So each genius has certain things that they crave and things that just crush them. And I think it's really interesting to think about as individuals. We all have things that we like and appreciate. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's more personality based. But other times it's like, oh, this is related back to my genius. So like for me, the things that I crave in work are appreciation and clarity because
Yeah.
I am in that kind of like helper role. Being acknowledged is goes a long ways, whereas the opposite of that is being overlooked. Like if I were to put in a lot of work and come alongside and do something and it just like is dismissed, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And then the tenacity piece of that is the clarity, having that like clear roadmap of what done looks like. That's the craving. And the crushed part of that is ambiguity, being like, the finish line is over there somewhere. Like,
Yeah.
no, like, give me a finish line, give me a deadline.
What was interesting, even before I had seen kind of knowing what your craves were in the context of working genius, while you and I have known each other for many years, we've only just started really truly working together in this kind
Right.
of relationship for a couple months. And early on, I think you had sent an email about something, and I think I responded back to you of just pointing out what I thought was really helpful in it, and kind of thank you. And you were great, and it helped me from that leader perspective, if you will, that you replied back going, Thank you for this. This is really helpful to me. Like, you told me what your craves were that
Mhm.
allow me then to better lead out of that context. And I think sometimes we forget to be our own advocates like that.
Mhm.
If we're in a situation, whether it's peer to peer, colleague to colleague, or that boss, employee
Mhm.
relationship, um, to say, I really liked this. I respond well to this. I need this. And to say, this is really hard. I mean, sometimes we don't advocate for ourselves. And
Mhm.
don't you think that having these tools and these words then can help somebody be a better advocate for themselves?
Absolutely. It gives us language that I think a lot of times we didn't have before. And
Mhm.
so especially in like you said in that situation, I was able to tell you like exactly what I need according to like my geniuses. I think in today's environment there's a lot of people who are job seekers
Yeah.
or looking for a different job that's maybe a better fit. Having the working genius language is a great tool for that to make sure that you're getting into a role that really fits and fills you. Because I can see the worst thing would be jumping from, one frustration into a role that's another frustration inadvertently. Because on the surface, it may look better, but when you really look at the nitty gritty of the type of work that it is, if it doesn't align, like you're probably not going to be happy.
Yeah.
So it really does give language around like what your strengths are, where you get that energy and joy that you're going to be that better player for the team because it's like, all right, somebody needs something, put me in the game, coach. Like I'm ready.
And I think it comes across a little differently. It's about productivity. It's not
Hmm.
just somebody being whiny, "Oh, I'm unhappy, I don't like my job." No, it's about,
Yeah.
I wanna be the best player on the team. I wanna help the team achieve that goal, and when we can talk about it out of this workflow or this context of
Hmm.
productivity, I think it just has a very different message. So I like what you
Yeah.
said about it's just safe language,
Hmm.
and when you can get the whole team on board using that same language,
Hmm.
uh, I think it's good, and I appreciate it because I think the team can then come to me going, "Okay, Sister Mary cheerleader over here, we appreciate your galvanizer, but we need some discernment and a little bit of a realistic view on something because
Yeah.
I can get caught up in the big idea and
Hmm.
the, oh my gosh, this is going to be great, but I need you all as a team to go, okay,
Hmm.
this is great. Could you just curb your enthusiasm for a minute? Let's
Yeah.
look at some decisions we need to
Yeah.
make.
Yeah,
So,
and I wanna piggyback on something you said about it's not just not liking a type of task. So I have a friend who his role has changed recently, and he's doing a lot of work in his frustration. And he
uh,
keeps saying, like, "I don't like it. I'd rather be hit in the mouth than do this work every day." And I'm like, "It's not that you don't like it, it's that it's literally your frustration. Like, you are wired to be, like, allergic to that type of work. So it's not just that
yeah,
you don't like it, I mean, you may not like it, but there's a reason. It's not just that you're being flippant and don't wanna do that type of work. Like, if it's
right.
in your frustration, like, that's, like, in your DNA, like, you can't help it.
And it's figuring out, is that a short-term thing? Is that it's
Mhm,
just a season and I just need to power through and I try to
mhm,
leverage, maybe view it through the lens of my genius, but if this is the long game, then yeah,
mhm,
it's time to, oh, maybe I need to pivot. This may not be the right role. Sometimes it's just a
right?
season, other times
Yeah,
it's longer term. So, yeah.
yep. It is, like and I think that helps so in the podcast, they talk about one of the, um, members of the team, tenacity is one of his frustrations, and so when he has to do tenacity work, he goes to a different location. Like, he has a designated
Ah,
conference room, and he's like, "I'm going to do tea work." And
yeah.
so he's like designates like an hour and a half that he's going to go in this different conference room and do his tea work, but knowing that it's not forever, it's just this phase that he needs to work through it.
That's a really smart tip of just, if you are having to do a task or a project that is gonna be in your frustrations, to chunk it up like that. You don't spend the whole day in that mode. Can you
Right.
just carve out an hour today, an hour tomorrow? And if you're like me, a procrastinator, sometimes it has to be the whole day because you put it off too long.
Yep.
But being smart about that and go, "Okay, I'm just gonna focus in, I'm gonna hit it hard, and then I'm gonna go find a task that is my genius."
Hmm.
Um, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Great conversation. I can't believe how quickly our
I
half an
know it
hour
went
went.
fast. Yeah.
And I
I
know you and
do
I could
want
talk
to.
about this for a long time.
Oh, yeah. We absolutely could. We could. I do want to mention real quickly. So if you're watching from, the interwebs, um, You may not be local to us, but if you are local to us here at Meridian, we are located in Stillwater, Oklahoma. In August, with my good friend and colleague Marcy Luter, she is hosting a lunchtime learning session that I am presenting on, all about the working genius. And so I think we got a QR code. If you want to register for that and attend, you can do that. Also in October, I will be doing the same session at our South Campus in Guthrie. We don't have the registration up for that yet, but it is coming soon. So if you are local to us here in Oklahoma, we got 2 opportunities for you this fall to come sit in a session and learn all about the working genius.
Yeah, it's been great. Appreciate everybody being on and some nice comments coming up. So I hope you're walking away with some new insights and maybe a little curious about the working genius.
Absolutely. And if you want to have a conversation, please reach out. I would love to talk to you more about the working genius. So I think that's it for us. I'm going to hit the outro and we will see you guys all next time. Ooh, somebody scanned the QR code. Appreciate that. Have a great day.
Yeah.